And before we go, I want to share one last thing that is near and dear to my heart. And I'm sure once I share it with you, it'll become near and dear to your heart. As you know, the world right now is a tumultuous place, both with COVID-19 continuously ravaging havoc over various different parts of the globe. There's a lot of uncertainty in various parts of the world. Obviously, some parts of the world are able to deal with it, better than others. Some have much more capability of attaining aid than others. Food isn't a problem here per se in North America as it is in some of the poorer countries. And one of the things that has been brought to my attention is the challenging and sad state of Cuba. And for many of you, you know about Cuba. You know it to be a cool destination, but Cuba is just right there in the middle there, just the southern tip, very close to Florida. Population of Cuba is 11.3 million people, give or take. It's about 90 miles off the coast of the Florida coastline. And it's been under communist rule for about 56 years. And anybody who knows me knows I don't stand for communist rule. I just don't think it's good for the people in any way, shape, or form. And as a result, Cuba's had a hard go. The Cuba we know and see on television and even on Google is this Cuba here, where everybody goes to resorts and beautiful white sandy beaches, beautiful people, and that's what we know Cuba to be. But the fact of the matter is, Cuba is being, in many respects, censored right now, and a lot of the news media, unfortunately, isn't either able to cover the tragedies that are happening in Cuba or choose not to, I'm not sure. But either way, it's not being covered properly. And when we were talking about Cuba in the community, a lot of people in my community came forth and said, hey, if you're going to help Cuba, I want in. Or, oh my God, have you heard about Cuba and some of the atrocities that are happening there? And it was only until I really started to dig deeper did I find what actually is happening in Cuba. And while this, yes, is a resort on Cuba, what's happening in Cuba right now is a very different place. There's a lot of unrest in Cuba, and they're fighting in many respects for liberty and freedom. Freedoms that we otherwise take for granted in North America and various different parts of the world. And as a result, in doing our research, we came across one quote that really touched us. And it's a quote from a father who lives in Cuba and who otherwise wanted to remain anonymous in fear of persecution, in fear of oppression, or worse, death. And here's his quote, and I want to read it to you. We are standing up, fighting for our lives because of the repression against the people. They are starving us to death. Havana is collapsing. We have no house, no food, no medicine for our children and our families. We have nothing. And it's sad that, right here as I stand on this stage, there are families with children, women and children and men, who are literally starving, who are literally selling whatever they can to muster up potentially what we otherwise would call a snack, they call a meal for their families. And as we got deeper and talked to community members, many of the community members we've spoken to are from Cuban descent. They now live in North America, both in Canada and the US. And the minute I talk about Cuba, they just cry and they feel helpless. And right now, flights going into Cuba are restricted. Foreign media is restricted. And I think it's important that we shine a light on this for a whole host of reasons. And I'll get to that in a second, but here's a small depiction of some of the small photos that we were able to muster up because it's just not being made public. And before I show those, I want to remind you about what Roma Wish is about. And we felt that Cuba really is a great recipient of Roma Wish mission. Now, our traditional Roma Wish mission has people otherwise from North America actually travel in and do works, physical, laborious work, whether it's rebuild housing, rebuild churches, rebuild schools, help with children, whatever it may be, whatever we're called to do, we do. For obvious reasons, we aren't able to actually go and make physical difference, but we're going to make a difference here, folks. And to remind everyone, our Roma Wish mission, it's our team's way of giving back to not only the communities we live and play in, but also the world we share. And I feel, as a leader of this company, very passionate about that. I think we're blessed beyond our wildest dreams to be where we are. And in simple terms, it's an opportunity to make a difference. And I want to welcome you to Roma Wish Mission Cuba for 2021. And prior to 2020, we had done 6 missions in person in those areas. 2020, during the pandemic, we weren't able to do nothing for various different reasons because everything was shut down. Looking back, I'm kind of bummed out that we didn't do something. We could have done something. We didn't. But I wasn't going to let another year by just because of the excuses as to why we couldn't help, but rather get in action in some way, shape, or form. So 2021 is going to be dedicated to Cuba and helping the Cuban people. Here's a small photo montage we have as to what's transpiring in Cuba right now. As you can see, there's some deplorable, roads and areas and dilapidated buildings. And it's just not a place where, to me, it looks very safe for children. Their housing is not up to par. It's just inadequate for humans to live in. And there's 11 million people who live in Cuba. But what's more sad is basic medicine and equipment isn't available. So the stories I've heard that children are otherwise suffering because there's no anesthetic, or suffering because they either have COVID and don't have the medicines to fight off COVID-19 and are otherwise having to suffer through it. From what I hear, it's pretty tragic. Just living conditions are deplorable, as I shared, and basic freedoms and rights that we take for granted are just not being met in this part of the world. There's also massive food shortages. I talked to you about many of them having maybe one meal a day, and what they call a meal and what we call a meal is two very different things. These are men, women, and children who have to scavenge for food and who otherwise are selling whatever they own for the few pieces of bread that they're able to find. Just unsanitary areas, disease, as those things start to mount, disease starts to mount. And then there's oppressions of basic freedom. So the challenge in Cuba right now is if you talk against the communist regime, they otherwise oppress you, they otherwise lock you up, or worse, you're taken away never to be found again, and or your family is taken away never to be found again. And the Cuban people are living in this fear every day, every minute, and feel helpless. And they've been making cries out to the world, and I hope this is a rally call for all the various leaders around the world. I pray that they hear the cries of the Cuban people and that they're freed from this oppressive regime which otherwise crushes human freedoms and gives no rights to men and women of any color, of any creed. And I just don't think that's right. And the people are fighting, and even as they fight in the streets, they're very scared. They're very scared because any fighting against or any protesting against governments can lead to very bad things happening to your family. And while we think photos do it justice, they really don't. And so I've, in my quest to find people from Cuba, both here and in Cuba, in North America and in Cuba, we came across, we know individuals who we actually know, but we can't say where she's from. We can tell you she is female. She lives in Cuba, and kindly asked that we don't give anything of her name or her family name or where she's from, her origins, in fear of, like I shared with you, persecution and death. And she lives with that fear of death every day if she speaks out. What's awesome is she's found a way with a small group of individuals to be able to bring in supplies and food. That's all I'm able to say today, but we're going to help this individual, and I'll tell you how in a minute. But before we do, we also have another video of someone living in Cuba who is making a plea to people like myself, you folks, and the world for help. I can't but feel compelled to want to help. And I know after you watch this video, you'll feel the same. So this is sensitive content, but I hope you hear the sincerity in her voice for help.
Hello. I will probably come with more of the same, but I think that the situation needed. My Cubans has been in the street now for 3 days asking for freedom, and this is really important to say because the Cuban government is making fake news. So it's really important to say my Cubans start a protest in a really pacific way, asking for freedom. And the government respond to them, putting militaries and police in the street, shooting them, hitting them, killing them. And the only thing that they have to defend themselves is the social medias. And they even cut internet so they can show out what is happening inside there. So I have a really hole in my heart with this situation, and I want to ask you, help us. Help me to help the mothers that today doesn't know where is their sons. The sons that doesn't know what is their fathers, because it's a lot of people that just disappear. It's a lot of kids that they just kill. It's a lot of young people that they are killing. They are recruiting teenagers in their house. They take them and they are obligated to go out to fight with his own brothers and sisters in the street. And this, if they don't do it, they go to jail. Cuban government get help now from Venezuela with more militaries to continue killing my people. We are alone, and no one say nothing, no one say about my people. So help me to tell to my Cuban people that they are not alone. Help me, help us to share every news, to tell the rest of the world what is happening in Cuba, because it's the only thing that we have. My Cubans are still fighting there in front, really strong. Even when they kill a lot of them. And they have nothing more than just this social media. So please help us to share everything. Help us to tell what is happening with Cuba right now. Please share the news, share this video. Please, this is really important, please. It's like no one's care. And this is not about politics. This is about humanity. It's our obligation as humans when we see something that is not fair to say this is not fair and this is not fair with my people. Please, 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 SOS for Cuba, please.
And so you can hear her testimony there around how they just want help. And I think she said it beautifully. This is not a political cry whatsoever. This is about helping humanity, helping people. So folks, I know the question comes up, how can we make a difference? And traditionally in a Roma Wish mission, we would go into Cuba It's unsafe. It is not safe to go there. We cannot go there. I cannot risk the lives of people. But I think we're going to be doing some really great fundraising throughout our company. I know Roma is going to be doing a ton of things to raise funds so we can buy things. So the goal of this is really to acquire funds that then we can go buy things, basic necessities like toothbrushes and toothpaste, maybe some energy bars, something for the kids, especially in Cuba, who otherwise have no say in what's come their way. I always believe the kids are the innocent victims of it all, but we're going to do something, and we're going to figure this out. We're figuring out ways to get product into Cuba without having it being taken by the government. If we wire money into Cuba, the government can intercept it. I mean, it's not easy, but we're going to figure out a way, folks. And I don't have all the answers, but what I do pledge that we be generous with our giving. And so the first thing we're going to do, and how you can help make a difference, or how your family could help make a difference, is we're going to be having T-shirts here on sale. We haven't printed them yet, but what we're asking is that before you leave this all hands meeting 32, that you speak to your DC leader, you speak to your sales leader, or you speak to Petra and Simona, and pre-order a T-shirt. Proceeds of the T-shirt will go 100%, like always, in Roma Wish fashion, 100% of the time to the children, to the families in need. And so our why we haven't printed them is we want to get a really nice amount. It'll bring the cost of printing down so we could give more money to the people of Cuba. So on the front it'll say 2021 Mission Cuba, in the name of Roma Wish, where we can, make a difference. Obviously the Cuban country there, and on the back is Viva Cuba, Cuba Libre, and it's basically free Cuba under the oppression and regime of the communist government. We hope this touches you. We hope that you raise your hand to want to support. T-shirts are going to be $15, and proceeds of that will go towards our mission for 2021. We don't even have a goal yet, but we're going to ask if you could be as generous as you can. We're going to be doing some bake sale drives. We're going to be doing some kickoff weeks. We're going to be dedicating some days to this. So stay tuned for more really great things to come. But, on behalf of myself, the entire Roma team, and by the way, if you're a partner out there and feel compelled to want to help Cuba, just raise your hand, let us know, and I'm sure there's ways that you too can help, offset some of this carnage that's happening in a country so close to our own. And, I thank you in advance for your help and your support and your compassion. I deeply thank you for your generosity and giving. And again, interest in this, or if you have a different way you'd like to give. I mean, we haven't set up a GoFundMe or anything like that yet, but we will. But our first thing is we'd love to put in an order for a couple hundred T-shirts where we could get proceeds for the Cuban people. Thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you for your hard work and tenacity. Thank you for helping to make Roma one of the greatest places to work. Thank you for creating remarkable experiences. Thank you for your hard work during what otherwise will go down in history as one of the most precarious times, uncertain times, and yet you all stand up to the occasion. I am super proud to lead this team and humbled to lead this team. You helped me become a better person. You helped me become a better leader, and for that, I cannot thank you enough. So on behalf of everybody at Roma, All Hands Meeting 32 is complete, and I look forward to what's going to be an incredible rest of the year. I'm Tony Guerreri, signing off. Thank you very much.